Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mil Spouse Transition Conversations. I am Anna Larson, a military spouse transition expert and your host. Let's talk about something that gets a lot of attention, is quoted frequently in surveys, is considered a major issue for retaining service members, is listed as one of the top challenges of military spouses, but still has not been solved. Military spouse employment. I'm sure that was not a surprise for anyone listening today. Today, I want to go a little bit deeper, though, than just getting a job. Today, I want to dig into what it really means for a military spouse to have a career. We spend years putting our work lives on the back burner while supporting our service members and our families, PCSing, holding down the home front, all of those terms you hear thrown out there about what military spouses do. And then transition hits. And it's often the catalyst that will allow a spouse to focus on their career for the first time. And that's where today's guest, Karen Francis, comes in. Karen Francis is an experienced career advisor and training program manager. She specializes in veteran and military family populations with extensive involvement in military community issues as an advocate, case manager, trainer, writer, and editor. She has a bachelor's from UMUC in psychology, a master's in psychology from Capella. She studied for and received her GCDF, which is a Global Career Development Facilitator, and CMCS, which is the Certified Master of Career Services. So we are talking about someone who has dedicated their life to helping others with their career, realizing that a foundation of a well-paid, interesting, and fulfilling career can assist the entire family in transition. She chose to specialize in employment and career assistance with transitioning military and spouses. Unemployment issues are her soapbox and advocating for that community, including speaking with groups, legislators, and those who can make a difference. And then Karen put this really great quote in her bio that I wanted to read. This says, getting a job is one thing. Finding a career takes more work, more training, and someone to help you find the way. I am very excited to have Karen here with me today. Hi, Karen.
Hello. Thank
It's
you. I always get a little, I don't know. It feels weird when someone reads my bio.
it's only because you're like, wow, I am a really amazing person. I originally had connected with Karen and we were going to have a completely different conversation. And then I saw her bio and I started to look at all of her experience. I said, Karen, we have got to talk about career today. This is such a hot topic and it's going to continue to be one of the hottest topics for military spouses for the next decade because even though we're talking about it, even though every survey result that comes back says this is a massive issue, we don't have the answers yet.
No, we don't. Before I start, I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying is from me, not from my employer,
Yeah.
either my current employer or my former employer. I was at an MSEP meeting last week, and this has been going on for goodness, decades and decades. And programs have come up and programs have gone and things were tried, projects were tried. The unemployment rate went from 24%, 21%. That's it.
3%, a 3% difference with all of that.
In 15 years, that's just not enough.
It's not just unemployment, but also underemployment. We have a
Absolutely.
lot of very smart military spouses out there who are working in positions that are not fulfilling because they
No.
are not what they are trained, educated, and want to do with their career life.
And having a career means you progress, right? These spouses aren't progressing. You're always the new person because you PCSed, you got a new job, you're the newbie.
I wanted to read your entire bio because I really feel like it speaks to the passion you have in supporting military spouses in this way. What is your why for this? Why are you doing this? What's your experience here?
My experience was in 2007 and 8, height of the wars, coming to DC and working with spouses because we had a huge uptick in spouse suicides and it wasn't being addressed. And the feeling of spouses that they were completely powerless. You always feel that when you're a military spouse because your world is not yours. your world is the militaries. In my case, it was the Army. The Army said where we lived, what my husband did, what my son did. And it was that feeling of powerlessness. And again, the uptick in spouse suicide that wasn't even being counted, that was like we didn't exist. And I realized that thanks to the advice of a very smart lady, Sue Hoppen, that's for you, who told me you need to concentrate. Another friend always says you can't boil the ocean. You have to boil it a cup at a time. Find your cup. My cup is employment, because employment gives you not just a paycheck, although never discount the paycheck. You got to pay the bills. It also gives you who you are. You are who you are by what you do. So if someone has a career that they want to start and grow, importantly, grow, you've got to be able to do that. And you can't, as a military spouse, as easily as someone who's not a military spouse.
This is so true. I was a military spouse for 2 decades, right? So my husband retired and I was very fortunate. I had a career. We actually met when he was on the break-in service. So he did 10 years and then had a break-in service and then went back in, was called up again through the reserves. And so we had met in that interim time and gotten married. I didn't sign up to be a military spouse. That was not part of that was my plan. I didn't even know what that meant really at that time. I had a career when he got his first duty station orders and we're moving to Arizona. I went to my boss. I'm like, what are we going to do here? And they put me in a remote position. And that remote position lasted 16 years. And every time we would transfer to a duty station that didn't allow me to work because it was outside of the United States, they would put me on an extended leave of absence. Now, my experience is so rare, almost unheard of.
Unicorn.
Yes, 100%. I didn't realize that. I didn't know how lucky I was to have a company that was willing to put me on a 3-year leave of absence and then bring me back on same pay, same title, same type of work, no diminish in my career trajectory. That is so rare. And so now when I hear these plights of the spouses and I think, how in the world, if I had not had this company, I would not be where I am today.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it is an absolute unicorn. I was lucky. I am a recovering paralegal. I used to be a paralegal. And my husband was guard. We did move, and I went from Minnesota to DC and moved as a senior paralegal, and then realized that was no longer my why. It wasn't giving me the joy that I was looking for, or even satisfaction anymore. So I talk to a lot of spouses who have given up on their careers. They gave up because they keep moving. And as one person said, I can only be starting so many times. I have experience. I can't always be the newbie with the minimum amount of PTO and never vesting in a 401k.
You hold these degrees that make you basically an expert in how to make and keep a profession or a career. When we talk about military spouse and employment, there's always this list of reasons why spouses are unable to create these sustainable careers. I think anyone who's listening to this that isn't a military spouse, sometimes they're like, why is it so hard? I don't understand. Even service members.
They're saying, but why can't you? Because we moved again.
Yeah.
It's the PCSs. It's the PCSs and being the main spouse or the main parent, because the kid's got to get picked up because kiddo has spent the whole morning irping in the nurse's office. Now, who is the parent who's going to go pick that kid up? It's not the uniformed service member, or very rarely is it the uniformed service member. It's the spouse. I was at MSEP, Military Spouse Employment Partnership, federal DOD program. And they bring on partners every year. And I was talking to some of the new partners when they came around to our table. They were trying to understand why one thing that they could do would be so important. And that's called PCS leave, which gives the spouse 14 days before PCS and 14 days after PCS. And it doesn't count against their paid time off. These are companies that are saying they can keep their jobs when they move. We can help them. And that's wonderful. But you can't expect them to move on Saturday and show up on Monday. You can't do that. PCS leave could help them at the beginning and the end. So if you're a company that wants to do for their military spouse what someone did for Anna, that's what you got to do. That's one of the huge. Don't make it count on their PTO, because they're going to use their PTO for the kids getting sick and needing to go to the doctor and all the rest of it. Give them that time off. Maybe a spouse has to take that 14 days before and after without pay. But you're not going to have to hunt for a new job, which is a soul-sucking, mind-bending, horrible thing to do. You have that 14 days of, okay, I'm fine. I'm safe. My job will be waiting for me. That is one of the biggest things. Another issue, we can't create sustainable careers, because if you have to start at the bottom every time you move, you're not only starting at the bottom for pay, you're starting at the bottom for PTO, you're starting at the bottom for that 401k, and you will never vest. Most 401ks, you have to be vested in it for at least 3 years.
I was listening to a podcast yesterday, a military spouse podcast, and the podcaster was saying how she is a registered nurse. She went to school for it and became a nurse, and every duty station, she would find a new job in a new hospital. And she said when they got to 14 years, she had gotten a job, and she said, I stood there and I looked at my boss who had 3 years of experience, and I was the new person, and I was so overqualified for the position I was given. She said, and I realized I'm done with this. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to be the new person. I'm not going to be the 14 years of experience being trained by the one who's done this for 3 years. She said, I completely quit nursing. And then she started building furniture. It was such an opposite. It was like she wanted to just completely get rid of the thing that had frustrated her, to the point of saying, doesn't matter. I spent so much time and money and so many years of my life doing this. I'm not doing it anymore.
Those are the things that can be changed. The RNs who need to get a new license every time they turn around.
Yeah.
I know a couple of lawyers who, do you know how much a bar exam costs? And you have to take certain classes, because everybody got to get their shill in there. So they are taking yet another class, learning the various nuances of a new state. And then they have to take another bar exam and wait for the results. And guess what? Honey, we got orders.
So PCS movement, certifications, always being the new person, PTO, lack of ability to vest in a 401k. All of these are major issues, and it really is demoralizing. You have a desire to do something more with your brain. We're smart people. We want more than just putting the kids in their ballet class or setting up a summer camp.
Oh.
Now, not every spouse falls into this. Career well-being is really, how do you spend your day? How are you occupying your time? And do you like what you're doing? So it doesn't necessarily have to be a paid profession. If you love being a stay-at-home parent and that is your career, that's great. But we're talking to those military spouses that say, I want something more. I want to do something for myself. I want to build a career that I love for me.
And they've also got to look at some very big things that most people aren't thinking about. Retirement. What's your Social Security going to look like? Let me tell you, it'll make you cry.
Yes. Okay. So see, you're very good at just leading into the next question here. You're very good at that. So here comes retirement. And now let's pretend we're in that typical military spouse trajectory of had a good job here, the next duty station, it was not as great and it was just a job. And over the years, you've managed to do a little bit. You got a lot of education under your belt. You've got your certifications that you need in order to be what you want to be. And then your spouse comes home one day, not saying I have any experience in this at all. They come home and they're like, I think I'm done. And you're like, what? What do you mean you think you're done? Like, we said 5 more years. No, I think I'm done now. I'm over my 20. I'm I'm tired. I don't want to put my boots on anymore. I'm ready to take off the uniform. And your spouse says that to you and then you're like, "Wait, am I ready? Wait. Now what?"
And they probably aren't ready. The unexpected one, honey, I'm getting out now, that is harder. The ones that I often talk with and who sometimes are so lost are the ones who they've been very comfortable in the military life. Maybe they are senior leadership spouses. And suddenly they're being told, yeah, everything you're used to, gone. You no longer have that cachet. You no longer are looked at as an expert anywhere. You're getting out. You're no longer part of a community. Think about the communities that we build. My husband's an Intel guy. That's not that big community stuff. They're usually basement dwelling, live in a skiff. They're not real tight. When I talk to somebody who is cav or infantry, they are tight. The sisterhood is real. So those folks, I think, sometimes have a harder time than the rest of us who are like, yeah, I know a few military spouses. I'm not in the pockets. They didn't have that experience. And the transition is from, you have this resume. Okay. I call them doilies because they're very pretty. They have a lot of nice stuff in them, but they're full of holes. They're full of holes because you moved. They're full of holes because there was no job for you when you moved. So there's a big hole and you filled it. You filled it with volunteering because you didn't want to sit there and lose the skills you had. You filled it with trips or whatever it was. And then you moved back to the States and you could go back to your career, but it still wasn't at the level you should have been. So first of all, you've got to take ownership of that resume and you've got to figure out how you're going to write it, how you're going to put down what you've done. There are a lot of programs that'll help. One of the ones is the one I work for, military spouse jobs, or there's Hiring Our Heroes. There's all kinds that you can find, but you've got to start early. Another caveat for anyone who wants to go federal, if spouse preference survives whatever shakeup is going on, you have to apply for and be hired before your spouse leaves. Because the day that you give up your active duty, military ID, and get the retiree or veteran one, your spouse preference is gone. Literally that day. There is no leeway.
These are many of the added stressors that come with just transition in general. These are not things that we're necessarily detailed down thinking about. The big picture item is I'm going to get a job and it's going to be the job I've always wanted. It's finally going to be my opportunity to start my career. And then, oh yeah, the resume, the federal preference, hiring preferences. And we have to wait 6 months because we're not actually sure where we're moving to. Am I looking for a remote job or am I going to just wait until we get there and then start my career? But then it's too late for some of these programs that are available currently to active duty spouses, but are no longer available to veteran spouses.
Yeah.
It really is such a frustrating experience.
Military One Source, you have 365 days from the day you leave the service. That's it.
Yeah.
And that is a big one. That's a big one to lose. So you need to start looking. When you have decided with your spouse, what is the light at the end of the tunnel that may not be the oncoming train, but might actually be the end of the tunnel. When you have figured out that date, you need to start. If you're 18 months out, great. That's a good place to be. If you're 3 months out, okay, now you've got to go full tilt. Your job needs to be figuring out where you're going and what you're doing.
How realistic is that though, Karen? You and I have both transitioned out of the military. And to think to yourself that 3 months before that transition finalizes, that your only thing you're doing is getting yourself set up for a career. That's
Yeah,
nearly impossible.
we were looking where we wanted to move to. What did we want to do? Trying to find a rental because we were moving from one state to another.
If you've got minor children, you're
Oh,
worried about minor children, your
I'm
pet.
lucky. I'm lucky. I didn't have little kids. I had 3 cats that we had to find a house that would accept 3 cats.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. And also just trying to figure out my direction. And I've talked to spouses who have said, look, I have done whatever it is for this many years, but I really don't want to keep doing it. To try to make that change while the transition's going on. And please remember, your spouse is giving up his or her community. They are changing the way they think. Because now I had one person who I was working with, and he said, this job that I've been offered isn't the greatest. I said, you do know that you can say no. And he looked at me like I had grown another head. And he said, yeah, I don't have to do this, do I? No, you don't.
Was not your commander
that-
is telling you.
Exactly. There's nobody mandating that you do this. Maybe your spouse is saying, honey,
It's been a while and the rent's coming due.
maybe it's that, but you have to. It's the two of you. Now, let's bring up something that is not talked about. Divorce post transition out is a fact. So you also need to maintain your own identity at that point. You need to be looking at your financial well-being. And if the worst happens, you need to figure out what you are eligible for and what you are not, and find someone to help you.
Yeah, Karen, I'm so glad that you said that, because I will tell you that has cropped up in the last 6 months. That has been something that has fallen across my desk so frequently that at the time of this recording, we are actually launching a new section on the Mill Spouse Transition website, and it is specifically for spouses who are going through a divorce. It's not legal advice because I am not a lawyer. I am a resource junkie. I am the one who's gathering the information so it's easier for you. Okay. And so I have already started the process of speaking with experts and compiling information for spouses so that they know what to do. And that financial piece is massive
Yes.
because there is that lack. There is no retirement fund that they've built, no 401k, all these things that we talked about that are the challenges for maintaining a sustainable career in the first place now play into that conversation when there is a divorce on the table. And you don't know what's going to happen in the future. You do have to set yourself up for success with or without your service member by your side. I had a live stream about caregiving and a spouse who had caregive her service member, and then he passed. And she said all of that money we'd counted on was gone. She said, try grieving and figuring out how to put food on the table. It's not the same as divorce, but it's a similar mindset of you're
Because
going through already a stress.
exactly. And if you don't have a network, because networking is how you find jobs now. It's not just what you know, it's who you know and how you can get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that because of all the moving and you're relying on LinkedIn or somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, that's not always going to work. You've got to start early. You've got to keep your networks going no matter what, because those networks are going to help you.
Talk about that for just a minute. There really is a very good military focused community on LinkedIn that can help build pathways, I'm going to say, into potential positions that a spouse might be looking for. But what other kind of networking should be happening, especially when you're looking at a transitioning spouse and a civilian career now? So, what would you recommend?
Besides LinkedIn for strictly career, there are some programs that will work with you as well. There's ACP. I've just become a mentor there. There is MSAN, which is Military Spouse Advisory Network. They have mentors that you can talk to. If you know where you're going to be, start there. Start looking around at what is available in your career field. I'm talking strictly career networking. I keep telling people, reach out to people in your career field. Maybe it's the new one you want to get into. Maybe it's the old one you've been in. Reach out to them. You can search LinkedIn in so many different ways. Find someone in your area. Reach out and say, hey, we're not that far away. Love to meet up with you. This is how it starts. There's always networking possibilities with some of these spouse networks. Hiring Our Heroes has Amplify, which is huge. But when you apply to Amplify, you better be serious. You better be ready, because if you're just thinking, maybe I'll do something, don't apply to Amplify. Amplify wants you to be ready, set, and willing to push yourself hard. There are networking with Blue Star Families, Military Spouse Jobs, Mil Spouse Fest. There's all kinds of networking like that.
Yeah. And some of those are career oriented and some of them aren't. But it really is about who do you know and who they know then. That's what networking is.
Find me on my LinkedIn. And if you look through my list of people that I'm linked to and you want to meet somebody, ask me.
Yeah.
I am more than happy to start a messaging conversation. That's what it's for.
When you become a veteran spouse, you aren't kicked out of the community. Even though somebody may say you don't qualify for this program or that, you are still a military spouse and seen by other military spouses as a military spouse. And they welcome you. I've never had an experience where it's not. But I'll caveat it with 99% of the time, you're going to be welcomed into those spaces. So if there is networking that you want to do, if you feel like that would be a good space for you, go for it. Don't think that just because you're now no longer part of active duty military life, you don't belong there anymore, because you do, for sure. There's just so many things going on. I don't know that we've been able to say, here's the answer.
There just absolutely isn't, because there's so many of us and with so many different attributes, careers, what we want to do. You have to make your own, but there are a lot of programs that are around to help.
To sum it up, first you have to recognize what your challenges have been. And then looking at those challenges and your resume and what that career trajectory might look like, and saying, here's how I'm going to address those things. Here's how I'm going to speak about that time where I have my doily resume, as you called it, right? These big gaps, these gaps and holes in my time frame in a career. But also, if you're changing careers, to be able to say, hey, I was kept from being this for so many years because of our military lifestyle. And now you have that opportunity to take a leap and try something new.
Oh, yeah.
And then it moves into networking and growing. And I think that the message I almost want to leave today is don't give up.
Oh, never, never. I've had spouses say, but I've never done anything like blank. Okay, let's break down what blank is. Okay, what is that you want to do? Okay, what skills do you need to have for that? Have you done anything like this? Well, yeah, I did it here, there. Okay, if you have the skills, I don't care if you used those skills as a volunteer, where you got a nice little plaque and a t-shirt or something, or you did it for money. Don't care. Is it a skill that you can use in this new, I want to be this? You're a nurse. You don't want to do nursing. You don't want to be bedside anymore. I can tell you that there's an awful lot of hospitals and those big conglomerations of hospitals and clinics and all that need case managers the skill you have with the medical terminology and the knowledge of codes that are needed for insurance or whatever it is, as simple as reading the handwriting of that doctor who refuses to dictate. As a paralegal, I used to read doctor's notes, and it's looked like a chicken got drunk. Okay? It's those skills that you can translate. You can translate a whole lot of those RN skills into being a case manager. You just need to reword. That's where people who can help you rewrite a resume. One
Yeah.
caveat, please, please, please don't pay for a resume. There are so many free resume groups for military community that you do not need to pay someone to write it.
All right. You heard it here. If nothing else, we're going to pull up Karen's contact information in just a minute. And so if you don't know where to find that support, I want you to reach out to Karen on
Ask.
LinkedIn and ask.
Absolutely. Please
Yeah.
ask me, because I know people who know people. I may not know what you need. Okay. I don't know it all. Believe me. But maybe, for instance, I don't know a whole lot about IT and cybersecurity. I work with people who do it every day, but I don't speak the geek. I know guys and gals who speak the geek and who can help you figure out how you can get into that field.
You just need to connect with Karen.
And I'll connect you with who you need. Okay.
I'm going to pull this up here. Karen, tell everyone where they can find you in order to talk all things career trajectory.
That would be my LinkedIn profile, Karen Santiano Francis. I am the only Karen Santiano Francis. There's a whole bunch of Karen Francises. Please remember the middle name. That's Santiano, not Santiago. I am not the capital of Chile.
It's hard having conversations like this because I think sometimes military spouses tune in and think, what's the answer going to be? Right? What's the answer going to be? And like you said, there is no one answer because our potential, our experience, our lived experience is always so different. But there are some hard and fast things you can do. The networking, the utilization of the programs that are out there. And again, if you don't know what those are, we just threw Karen's bio information up there. Karen Santiano, not Santiago because she's not the capital of Chile, Francis. And all of that information is going to be also in our show notes so that you can always go back to it and connect directly. Karen, thank you so much for being here with me today, talking about careers. I appreciate your expertise and your willingness to just lay it out there for all those military spouses out there.
We got to be honest with them. We cannot keep telling them, oh, yes, this one thing is going to make a huge difference. This one thing is all you need. You got to collect it. You've got to collect the programs.
Oh my gosh, those are like the best parting words of wisdom for this. You got to collect all the pieces that make sense for you. And a lot of it's about taking ownership of that process for yourself. Nobody else is going to be able to do that for you.
Nope.
I do want to say to every spouse out there, you can be successful at this. And as frustrating as it might be, guess what? As a community, reach out and tell us about the frustration. We get it because we've been there. I promise. We've been there.
Yes, we do.
All right, everyone. I want to say thank you so much for being here with us today for this military spouse transition conversation. You can always find me on LinkedIn as well. And if you are listening to this on social platforms or in podcast platform, please hit like, subscribe, and follow. We'll see you.